So anyway, we're going to talk about Brut IPA today. You may have heard of this new emerging style. There aren't too many new styles of beer that are created. Generally it's in the IPA category with the brown, the red, the black. We've seen those like kind of come and go and fade. Maybe Brut will run the same path, but maybe it won't. So we'll see. It's a very interesting style, and I'm happy to present it to you guys tonight. And we have samples that are coming around as well of the beer that I brewed. Andrew Mitchell also has an example of his style that he brewed as well. So if you get bored with mine, you can always drink his. But you should drink his anyway. All right, so let's talk about the history of Brut IPA. So this is a beer that was developed in like late last year at Social Brewing. Kim Sturdivant is the brewer out there in San Francisco. He was experimenting with this amylase enzyme with his bigger stouts. Thank you, over here. He and another brewer at a different brewery were experimenting with an amylase enzyme, and he kind of got the idea like, hey, why not try to make an IPA kind of like in the champagne style. So this is where the idea kind of came from, and it's like a really brief description of Brut IPA. It should be kind of champagne-like, so very clear, very pale, light-bodied, spritzy. It's dry as a bone. It should finish at 0, and then hoppy and like very hop flavor forward, but not. We're not focusing so much on the bitterness because you're competing with. If you have a bone-dry beer and a really bitter, it's like kind of a clash. So I think you kind of want to keep the bitterness at very, very lower levels if you can. So, and hops are just the world's your oyster when it comes to hops. It can be anything that you want. Maybe avoid the grassier styles or the old crummy hops that you have in the freezer, but like fresh, tropical, dank. I mean, I did a version of it with some of the newer German ones, like Mandarina Bavaria and Hallertau Blanc, and I mixed in El Dorado with that too. Really cool beer. It's really nice. So low IBUs, of course, and the most key ingredient here is this enzyme, and it's called amyloglucosidase. So this is the thing that's going to break down all the starches, all the big chain sugars in your beer, and it's going to hopefully go down to 0.
Where do you get hops like that, Greg? Never heard of them.
Where?
Never heard of those hops. Where do you get them? Are they pellets or are they old?
We'll take questions at the end. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
In writing only.
No, Jay, like the German ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I got them from Hops Direct.
But are they whole? Are they pellet? Are they?
Yeah, they're pellet. I only use pellet. Yeah. Yeah. Well, we can talk hops a little later as well. Yeah, they're fun though. So a general recipe. So you want this to be like really light in color, right? Like look how light this is. It's it's fairly light, I'd say. Yeah, like you want to use your pilsner, like a general pilsner malt. You can use rice, you can use corn, you can use corn sugar, anything to get flake barley. You can get anything into this beer that you want. That won't add a whole lot of color because again, we're going for the champagne style. You don't see dark champagnes except if it's rosé, but typical Brut champagne is not dark. Neutral ale yeast. I use yeast 1056 American ale for mine. So it's a personal choice, but I don't think you want to add a whole lot of yeasty characters in terms of esters and things like that. I think it's pretty straightforward. And again, lots of hops. So late boil, Whirlpool, dry hop. Just trying to get as much of that hop flavor and the aromatics into the beer as possible. And again, soft water too. Well, we can talk about water in a second, but I think I base this beer on a cream ale. I think cream ales can be very soft and very light in color. And basically, I just use the cream ale base malt and water profile, and then just added a lot of hops to it. So. Cool. So, in terms of process for what I use and what maybe you would typically use, and of course these aren't hard and steady. You don't have to use these if you don't want to. These are just kind of like basic guidelines to kind of guide you if you're making it for the first time. Again, you can experiment with whatever you want, but I would typically use distilled and filtered water as a kind of a mix of that, and that's what I use in my cream ale. And it's got that soft character that I find that you just can't get with regular Cleveland water. Even though you can use Cleveland water like no problem, I just think it's just a little bit different, and it's maybe a 5% difference in terms of maybe the effect that you get. But I think it's worth it. We're home brewers, and we don't have to worry about large quantities of these things. So, and then a balanced chloride to sulphate ratio. That's a good idea because you don't want too much sulphate in this. You don't want aggressive hop. You just kind of want a soft kind of hop character, something that's neutral but a lot of hop flavor. If you do residual alkalinity, if you do those spreadsheets on John Palmer or whatever you use at home, -30 is a realistic value, perhaps. I'm sure the spreadsheet will tell you something different, but that's what I was shooting for. And then in terms of mashing, 148 for 90 minutes. You just want to encourage the breakdown of all the starches in the mash the sugars in the mash to get as much attenuation as possible. Even though you're adding the enzyme, so it may not even be. You can maybe mash at 155. Who knows, right? Because you're adding this enzyme, and it's going to break things down. But I was playing on the safe side, so 148. Boil it for however long you want, and then I add hops at the last 5 minutes. And I'll go through the recipe here as well for this particular beer. But adding hops to 5 minutes, and then experiment with something too, which is kind of for debate as well. I did a Whirlpool at 120 degrees Fahrenheit. So I read a couple articles about doing a Whirlpool at really low temperatures instead of like just turning off the kettle, at 210, and then maybe it's like 208, and then you add the hops, and then you get maybe more utilization of the hop, like the hop hole, the alpha acid will actually get into the beer. But I was just thinking, why not do a really low one, and let's see what happens. So I also used that on the IPA that the one in Son of Brazilla. So maybe we're onto something, maybe not. Mike, you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say that I believe that isomerization happens at least until 165 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mm-hmm.
So I have done things where I wait until 150 degrees before I threw something into the Whirlpool. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't know why 120 is the value that, why 120 was the value that these people were talking about. So I'm like, why not? Let's experiment, because it's something that I hadn't done quite often. I would just throw it in at 0 minutes, and then just turn off the flame, and then go from there.
So you just wait for the temperature to come down? Or
No, I would actively chill it. Yeah, just to save some time.
in which way? To put a wort chiller in, or?
Yeah, I have a copper coil chiller.
Yeah.
Yeah, just turn on the water and then let it drop down to about 125 or so, and then.
And when you got to 120, did you stop chilling?
Yeah, stop chilling at 120, and then for about 20 minutes or so.
And then do you chill again after that?
Chill again after, yeah. After 20 minutes, turn it back on. Just turn the water back on, and
So this is
yeah.
all an aroma addition, right?
Yeah, flavor and aroma. Yeah, trying to just pack it in.
Chiller in there? Or
Yeah, yeah. Coil chiller doesn't leave once it's in there.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
That's what I want to make sure.
Yeah. That's a good process question.
Why an IPA? I mean, IPAs traditionally are bigger beers with higher hop content, higher alpha, bigger IPUs.
Well, and we're gonna get to the actual recipe. You'll see this is not a very big beer. It's a very small. It started us at 1054.
Well, I'm thinking maybe it was 8. How about a brew pale ale?
Possibly. we'll come back to that in a minute. I'm all about delay with these hard questions. So the enzyme. So the enzyme is important because you can add it at any time. Really, you can add it in the mash. You can actually, the mash is probably not a bad time to add it because the enzyme will work really fast in the mash at higher temperatures. But for my batch, I threw it in at the very, like after the wort's been chilled and it's in the fermenter and before I had the yeast. So.
How long was the enzyme in it before you added the yeast?
Right after, like 2 seconds after.
Oh, so you added them together?
Yeah, you can add them together. Mm-hmm.
You also said you could add it in the mash process right at the very beginning.
You could,
So
yeah.
anywhere in between.
Yeah. Well, there's like certain ramifications if you add it during the mash. Then you don't have to worry, but if you're gonna like repitch yeast or anything like that, you don't want to add it into the fermenter. If you're gonna reuse that yeast, let's say, because it will carry through to the next batch. You know, if you're making
Would you
like
see
a
a
different
difference
beer.
at that point?
What kind of difference?
In going to 0-0?
I mean,
You know, like these enzymes, they're to bring it down to like, so there's no sugars. So, I mean, does it matter if you put it in the mash or at the secondary?
I don't think so. I actually haven't. I haven't actually. Yeah, it's going to denature in the boil. So then you can actually pitch your yeast and say, all right, I'm going to reuse this yeast again for a different batch for not a non-brut IPA. If you're going to use it, well, yeah, if you use it in the fermenter, you wouldn't really necessarily want to repitch that yeast because it's going to have that enzyme still in it, and it's always acting. Like if it doesn't get denatured, it's always going to act. In terms of if you use the right quantities and stuff too. So
212 temperature doesn't impact the enzyme?
It will. Yeah, it'll denature it. Yeah.
So you're pretty much going to use that enzyme either before the boil or after the boil. Because once it hits the boil, it's going to denature the enzyme, and the enzyme will stop working. So if you want to reuse that yeast, then you want to use the enzyme in the mash before the boil, and then you can reuse the yeast. But if you put it in the fermenter, then the enzyme's not going to get denatured.
So the enzyme does its thing at some point
Yeah.
at a lower temperature.
Yeah.
Either the 148 or the 70 degrees before you hit the yeast.
The biggest unknown, Blake, is like, how long in the mash does it need at like 150 degrees, right? I don't know that. I just think it's safer just to, because I'm not reusing the yeast, like why not? Give it as much time as possible, right? In the actual fermentation.
So the yeast gets in there and doing its thing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
You're
Thank
just
you.
trying to get rid of all the dextrose, right?
Yeah, essentially, yeah. Absolutely.
When
So,
we did it at Butcher, we put it in the mash, and he wasn't quite happy enough to have it right week in. We added some to the fermenter.
so this is helpful information. So Pete, if anyone didn't hear that, Pete said he used the enzyme in the mash, but it didn't really quite do the job, so they had to add it in the fermenter. So I would suggest just add it in the fermenter. I don't know how many of you repitch yeast, but I don't. So. And then I transferred to secondary and dry hop again. And then I used gelatin to fine, actually in the keg. So, all right. So here's the recipe that I used for this batch here. As you can see, it's not a very staggering gravity. 1054 finishes at 0. It did finish at 0. Less than 30 IBUs and about 7.1 alcohol. And here's the malt. The malts, I just split it between. I just used my cream ale. This is my cream ale recipe, so if you want that one too, that's the malt bill for it. Just add Liberty hops instead of American. Yeah, Andrew.
Do you think it matters what your grain bill is with this enzyme as far as what base malts you're using?
Yeah, well, it's all about color, right? It's about light color. So I guess you could use any sort of malt if you wanted. I mean, I'm even debating why should I use corn sugar in this type of beer? It really doesn't make sense. But if I wanted to make a smaller beer, I just eliminate the corn sugar, and then there you go. You have like you have a few points lower in terms of overall gravity. So I don't even think corn sugar is probably unnecessary, but it's just my cream ale, so I just throw it in there anyway. So. And that some percent is kind of high, actually. You know, it's like it's not. I think it's a very easy drinking beer, but it gets kind of dangerous, you know, after a couple pints.
Now this is not 7.1.
It is 7.1.
You're making OG of 0.31, and 0 is giving you a session.
Yeah. Yeah, 0.31. And it's a cheap beer to make too, right? I mean, it's extremely cheap. So, and you can back off on the hops as well.
As an unwise, uneducated home brewer, when you say 37%, I can understand the percentages and how to figure that stuff out. If you're making a 5-gallon batch, how many pounds is that? And I can figure out how many pounds of all that, and I can figure out the percentage, what the pounds are to put in.
Well, yeah, it's based on your efficiency of your system.
Okay.
Gas is like, I don't know, 4 pounds, 5 pounds for 37%. I mean, you're not talking a whole lot of
No.
malt here.
You're looking at a recipe that's probably 9-10.
It's
4 or 5 pounds would be 37%. I can figure out the rest of it from there.
yeah. If you want help, you know, creating something, I'd be happy to share that with
I'm gonna
you.
do the best.
Yeah. Well. So yeah, mash at 148. So just to encourage that, the attenuation. The hops I use in this recipe, Mosaic, Simcoe, and 007, the golden hop, formerly known as Idaho 7. So I'm not sure. Like, you know, I use 1 ounce of each at 5 minutes left in the boil, and then 1.5 ounces each in the 120 Fahrenheit Whirlpool. Then added an ounce of Citra in there too, just for good measure. I love Citra, it's fun, but I'm trying to wean myself off of Citra. It's tough. It's a tough habit to break. I'll tell you that. Yeah. So then I did a dry hop. About the 3rd day of fermentation, when things are kind of slowing down. I did a dry hop of 1 ounce each of those hops above there, and directly into the fermenter as it's brewing, as it's fermenting, it's just finishing off. I may be reconsidering doing this as well, maybe waiting a couple extra days to do it, just for like the diacetyl. I don't know, there's like some strange thing going on here that I don't think, maybe the yeast cells are coating, or the hop resins are coating the yeast cells that,
Hop creep.
I'm sorry?
Hop creep. You put that much hops in, you're gonna get sugar from the hops.
Yeah, that too.
And that creates diacetyl, so then you need to do another diacetyl.
Yeah, and so, and this was kind of rushed too. I made this on October 10th, so this is very young beer. So I may reconsider doing that. So you don't have to do that on the 3rd day, maybe the 4th or 5th. So and then I transferred and did 2 ounces in the dry hop. So
Time difference between your day
day 3.
and the
So it's about 11 days. I transferred 11 days after I pitched yeast.
Okay.
Yeah.
All 11 days would be your second?
Yeah, secondary. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. I usually like to give it a little more time just to kind of let everything, you know, ferment out, but I was in a rush. Son of Brewzilla was coming up, so. All right. So then I used 30 drops of this. It's the Grape and Granary sells Convertes. That's the Brewer Supply Group, BSG. That's their brand name for it, but it's the amyloglucosidase enzyme. I used the Y yeast 1056 ale yeast. Just pitch enough yeast for that. 67 degrees, or wherever you want. 67 seemed like a pretty good temperature just to. You're not going to have too many fruity esters at 67, and I like the overall profile 1056. I'm a huge fan. 001 I think it's a little different. It says it's the American. They say they're the same thing, but I don't think they are flavor wise. So that's my preference. And then of course closed transfers. You got to do it. I mean, I didn't do it for many years. I would say take the time and spend a little bit of money to learn how to do closed transfers, especially with IPAs. I mean, it's a crucial aspect of doing that, and maybe even next year we can do some closed transfer kind of workshops or something, because I mean, Oxygen is just the killer of hop flavor, aromas, and all that stuff. So, yeah, it's definitely worth taking the time to do it. And gelatin finding in the keg, so you can kind of get an almost like brilliant clarity. I wouldn't say it's brilliant, but it's pretty darn close. It's getting there. And then you got to carbonate it, right? Like a champagne gets carbonated high. You never had a flat champagne, never had a cloudy champagne. You'd be suspect if you had either, you know, if none of those factors were there, you'd be kind of skeptical. So 4 volumes is the target. All right. Has everyone had a chance to taste the beer?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's hear some comments. Let's get some feedback. Okay. That's one comment.
One last question.
I like that comment. Let's keep going with this.
Sorry,
It's good. All right. Thank you.
On the 1 ounce of each on the house, and you added 1 ounce of Citra to the 1.5 ounce each, and then you have 2 dry hops after that. Does that include the Citra in the 1 ounce of each?
I'll send you my recipe. I'll send you it like the exact same, like the exact recipe I have.
Be Bavaria,
Yeah.
SBClocal.net.
You got it. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, I got you covered. Yes.
So what if you had something like this 10 plus ABV at high gravity, and you did this? Like, would it be a nightmare? Would it lower the ABV?
It could be. Yeah, it could be like you're like a triple IPA or quad or what's the next one over that?
But it wouldn't diminish ABV.
Well, so that's the balance, right? Brewing's all about balance, you know, and it's like. What are you going for? Yeah,
Like
are you,
10 ABV session. I mean, like,
yeah, right. You could. I think maybe you could do it. I think it would take some. I think there may be a little bit of residual, like, you know, points there. I don't know if it finished to 0. If you just have to use more enzyme if you wanted to, but I would like caution that because you'd have to back off on the bitterness too. But like. Kim Sturdivant at Social, he makes, well, I think he's making like a triple IPA too, or someone out there, but that's where you use his enzyme.
He's doing triple brew?
Not a triple brew, no, but just a triple IPA in general.
That's dope.
So the question is different hop profiles. Yes, I have. I've done the German, kind of the new age German hop profile, Mandarin and Bavaria, and Hallertau Blanc with El Dorado. So I think I presented that one at the SAS meeting probably like a month ago, 2 months ago. It's nice, yeah, it's nice. But I would encourage you to experiment with any sort of hop profile that you want. That would be, I don't think you can go wrong. We'll see, though, right? I'll be the judge of that.
What's your ABV?
ABV is 7.1. Yeah, 7.1. Call an Uber.
Did you do a smash with this that would really help you isolate like the hops and really help you understand the
A
hops?
smashed brut IPA would be a great idea. I think, yeah. I think it would be. In terms of like getting, if you just use a really light Pilsner malt and a really, flavorful aromatic hop, sure, why not? I think that's great. It's a great idea. Jim?
What's the you said on your recipe you had 30 drops of the Verde.
Yeah.
Is there a guideline for that in terms of drops per points of it?
Yeah, so the bag that I bought at the Grape said 30 drops, up to 30 drops per 5 gallons of beer or wort. Yeah.
So 6 drops a gallon roughly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
But they don't tie it to like gravity points per gallon.
No, they don't. It's a good question, but I think if you add enough in the beginning, it's gonna ferment out. And it's just this little bottle too, and I think it'll last me like till 2040. Yeah.
What is the shelf life? I mean, do you refrigerate it or?
Oh, the bottle's cheap. The bottle's cheap. It's like $6 or something. I don't know.
Can you refrigerate it or?
Yeah, you keep it in the fridge.
And
Yeah.
How long? I
Well, I don't think there's a shelf life. I don't know, not that I know of.
6 months.
So this amylase is actually, it's developed from like a black mold too. It's kind of interesting. So it's kind of fun, right? I shouldn't have told you that. Now you're not gonna drink the beer. Oops. It's good. It's good. Yeah, Andrew.
Do you think Brut IPA is a sub-style of IPA, or do you think it's sort of like a session beer, like a brut beer? Are we going to see other types of brew? I need to see your crystal ball come out here for this.
Cascadian dark.
But yeah, like are we going to have a brut oatmeal stout or something?
Whoa.
Hope not.
Someone will try.
That's a good question.
What do you think? I guess because you can't see the future.
Or what do you want?
Well, so like brut beers are not. It's not unique, right? It's not the first time someone's done a brut beer. Like the Belgian beer Deus, you may be familiar. It looks like a champagne. It doesn't have as much hop profile or character, but it's the champagne of beers. That's what they bill it as. I mean, I remember having it like Well, yeah, we have that too, right? I forgot. Yeah. No, but, so Deus is really nice. If you haven't had it, I would try it as well. It literally is a champagne of beer. So I had it about 10 years ago. It was good.
I got some enzyme
Now she's a
3 or 4 months ago. They indicated it was really expensive. They also said don't use too much of it. And they use it for stuck fermentations, which makes it a lot of sense.
What was it called?
It's an amylase.
Amylase.
Amylase
Yeah.
enzymes. It's the same thing, right?
It might be. It might be similar. Yeah.
And, but you said it's only $6 for like a little bottle.
Yeah, we're talking like maybe like an ounce or something like
So
that.
the same size as my hash oil?
What's that?
That's your next beer.
That's right. So yeah, you can as a professional brewer, you can buy this like a huge pail. You can buy a huge pail of this amylase enzyme, but it's really just for home brewers. You just need a little bottle. Any sort of other flavor, aromatic kind of things you guys get out of this beer? Let me know. Tell me.
It reminded me of Russian River.
Okay. You should try it. Does anyone get any sweetness out of this beer? No, like having not known that this beer finishes at 0, like it's a perception, right? It's a perception.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's dry and sweet.
These guys are interested, yeah. Mike.
So, do you have any tips on how not to like overdo it? This is one of those characters
Yeah. So the question is, how do you not overdo it with astringency and astringency? Hop bitterness. Well, yeah. Here's the thing, right, guys? If you don't mind, yeah, let's listen here. Jay, that's you, man. Come on, let's listen. It's an important question. You're good. I know you do. There's good beer too. So the question is like, how do you limit astringency and in this beer, in this style, since like it's going down to 0. I was focused on late, like extreme late hopping. Do the Whirlpool, do an all Whirlpool edition. Don't even worry about a 5-minute or later or earlier edition. Just do a gigantic Whirlpool. Like I don't think you can pull enough out at 150 or whatever you're going to do a Whirlpool. I would also say, to balance it out too, like the calcium chloride actually, helps alleviate some of the bitterness and astringency. So I noticed that this beer actually tonight was a little astringent, and that's like the feedback I got on this beer was that it was like a little harsh, a little astringent. It scored like a 26 at Son of Brazilla. Yeah, I know, right? Kind of crazy. Yeah, but I think the comments were valid though, because the comments were it was a little harsh, a little astringent. So I dosed I dosed this right before I came here with a little bit of calcium chloride. I took 100 milliliters of distilled water, added 3 grams of calcium chloride, made a solution, and put about 20 milliliters into this keg. So, and it really helped rounded everything out. So there's obviously, even though you could make like possibly like a bad beer, there's always ways to adjust it at the end. So just know that too. So
I give it a 40.
40.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Out of how many? Out of what? Okay, 50.